Hello, everyone. Welcome to Legal Answers Just for Real Estate. I'm Gayleen Rogers Lonergan. I'm your host, and today we are going to continue our series we've been working on for the last couple of podcasts about owner finance and some other issues regarding insurance today. So we are really fortunate to have Mike Haskins here today as our guest. He's been in the insurance industry for over 40 years, kind of like me in the legal industry, and worked with him for a long time. And always he was my go-to guy on investor, owner finance, any type of investor insurance needs that we had. Welcome, Mike.
Good morning, Kaylee.
So let's just start right in. So maybe you can just explain to our audience how you can properly insure an owner finance transaction that, as most are a wrap of an underlying existing mortgage. So a wrap sort of a subject to.
Okay. That's probably one of the more complex items your clients will run into. And I'm assuming most of your people, your real estate investors are smaller investors doing single family.
Correct. Not
Right.
necessarily
We're
seasoned professionals.
yes, we're not insuring $50 million office building or something.
Correct.
That said, and two caveats first, I am not an attorney. You're the attorney, so I'm not giving legal advice.
Correct.
And I am not a claims adjuster, so
Correct.
any claim scenarios are meant as educational and informational. Now that I got out,
Not advice.
now
Correct.
I put that out there, but the subject to wraps are difficult. First of all, not a lot of insurance companies like to insure that type of situation. Because there's too many parties involved in it. You have the seller, who's the old owner, the purchaser, mortgage out here, and maybe a second mortgage. There's just a lot of moving parts
Correct.
in those. But to properly insure it, the biggest thing is getting the ownership right. The purchaser of the property needs to be listed as the owner of the insurance policy.
Absolutely. That's absolutely vital. And so many people don't understand that. They'll say, oh, we're just gonna leave the insurance as it is. And I always say, because
Nope.
you told me, no, there won't be any coverage if you do that.
Yes, and an insurance policy is a contract between the purchaser of the insurance and, the insurance company.
Mhm.
And, going to contract laws, you probably know a lot better than I am, you have to have a insurable interest. You have to have some reason to insure that property. So the ownership of the property gives you the insurable interest. So making sure that, and again, the owner is generally the person listed on the deed.
Correct.
Um, so that person needs to be listed as the named insured on the policy, so in the event of a claim, they get the proceeds of it. If you leave the prior owner as the owner on the insurance, and there's a claim, the insurance company is gonna say, that person doesn't own this property anymore, they have no insurable interest. Thank you very much for your
Free
money
money.
over the years, but we're not paying this claim. Now,
Right.
yeah, and the mortgagee may get some money out of it, but the new owner of the property
Right.
would not receive proceeds from it. So the biggest thing is you want to list the purchaser, the new owner, as the named insured. Second thing you want to do is the existing mortgage, and they need it still listed as a mortgage of the property. They would be the first mortgagee listed. And so we're protecting their interest. Again, if the house burns down, the checks can be made payable to the owner of the property and the mortgagee company. That's common for any property claim, is the checks in two names, the owner and the mortgage company. So the mortgage company will hold that check until they're happy that you've done the repairs and so forth.
Correct.
The mortgage company's driving that part of the transaction. So anyway, the owner, first mortgagee, solicited, Bank of America, whoever it is. Then the prior owner, it gets listed as either an additional insured or additional interest, so their name will show up on the declaration policy. So that will show when you provide the proof of insurance to the mortgage company, they will see the mortgage company's listed as first mortgagee, the prior owner is listed there as an additional interest on the policy.
Right.
So, which doesn't give them any rights to the policy, but it gives, other than are notified if something, if the insurance were to cancel or something would happen with the insurance policy.
correct.
Okay, so that's how you do it right. Um,
Yeah, if you don't, yeah, my experience is if you don't do it that way and, the mortgage company, generally speaking, when you're dealing with the larger mortgage companies, the larger servicers and the larger mortgage companies, their insurance department just does what they do. And so when you send in a revised declaration, that doesn't cause a lot of consternation. All the problems where I run into it, where there might be an issue, is where a credit union or a small mortgage company, where they look at everything. That is where there may be an issue when you send in the new insurance.
Right, yeah, and there's no way around that from the insurance company perspective, because we have
You
to
gotta do
insure
what you
the
have to
owner
do.
of the property.
Right,
It may trigger the dual sale clause.
Right.
And that's a risk you are taking with a wrap.
that's correct. That is a risk of the wrap, absolutely. But I always, whenever someone brings me an owner finance, I look to see who that underlying mortgage is to see whether I think we're gonna have a problem
Yes.
or not.
And just to add a little more complications, we have the owner of the property is named insured, the mortgage, first mortgage as first mortgage. The seller has an additional interest or additional insured. And half the time, there's probably a second mortgage out there too.
Right.
So they get
Right.
listed as second mortgage. So we get 4 people listed on this policy. That's why you have a hard time finding insurance companies that want
wanna
to
do
do it.
it.
It's just a complicated
Right.
situation.
Right.
And,
Yeah, and I tell my people, particularly the people that sell properties owner finance. I'm like, you need to give your buyer some guidance on this insurance. Because if they go to their Allstate agent, their State Farm agent, their farmer's agent that does single family home owner occupied, they're either not gonna wanna do it, not gonna know how to do it,
we'll have the company that will
won't
do
have the
it.
company that will do
Yeah.
it. So you've got to give some people some guidance. That's why you've been such a valuable resource to me to refer my clients to.
Yeah, in my past life, I was an independent insurance agent, meaning I represented multiple insurance companies.
Right,
I mean, Allstate, State Farm agent, wonderful people, do a great job. If you want to just insure your home and your personal home, your auto, good company, great companies for that. You start getting into some more complicated real estate investors, they don't always have the tools that they need to do it properly.
correct, correct.
That's
Or the knowledge as far as what is really going on. What's really going on here? Yeah. So, that's great. So we kind of went over what the extra steps we need to do on a finances. Just make sure all our documentation is correct. And then also, I always recommend to my clients that before they cancel their existing insurance, get this revised declaration into that lender. Make sure everything's good and then cancel their existing insurance. All right, so what are some major items that a private lender or slash investor should consider when insuring a property to make sure that if they're a lender, what their collateral is adequately protected?
If they were a lender, again, the private lenders, you want to make sure, one, that you're listed as a mortgage on the policy, so your name appears on there. And two, the amount of coverage is sufficient to cover your interest. As a lender, basically a mortgagee, you have interest into that policy also. You have the right to pay the premium. If the name insured starts defaulting on the premium, you can pay the premium,
Very
on their
important.
behalf, yeah, so you gotta keep them, insurance companies, insurance is not free, so you do have to pay for it. And the other thing is, the mortgagee is if the insurer does something wrong, dubious, burns the house down for the insurance proceeds, right? Arson, the insured will not receive the proceeds from the policy, but the mortgagee as a innocent party their interest is still protected. They will still receive their share of the proceeds. So.
Very
You
critical.
know, so the mortgagee has actually some very good important rights in policy. And, you know, as long as they're an innocent party, they're okay. They also have some obligations as a mortgagee. So if you're lending money, if the house goes vacant or there's a change in exposure, going vacant being the biggest one, you're supposed to notify the insurance company. So
Okay,
make sure you-
that's a tidbit that I
that-
bet a lot of our viewers
Yes.
don't know.
Yeah, so you as a mortgage are required to notify, if you become aware of the situation, you're required
Right.
to notify the insurance company of a change in exposure.
Right,
Going vacant is probably the most common situation.
right. Okay, what about, what about actual cash value versus replacement cost?
That's the two biggest types of coverage you will find on an insurance policy. Replacement cost is the better of the two, meaning in the event of a claim, easy example is a roof, a hail claim. The roof is 10 years old, or a 20-year shingle, probably, so in the event of a claim, the roof is destroyed, you will receive the sufficient money to replace the roof, so you'll get you'll get a brand new roof. with
Right.
Replacement cost.
Right.
That's the biggest, and that applies to any of the physical dwelling, okay?
Uh-huh.
If there's belongings inside the house, that's a different issue. But the physical dwelling, you're gonna replace it.
Right,
And just one little tidbit on that also is the event the roof is damaged, they will pay, usually they pay the actual cash value up front. Get to that definition in a second. They hold back a certain amount of money until you actually replace it. One of the conditions of a replacement cost policy is you actually do replace it.
right. You can't
You-
just pocket
You
the
can't
money.
put the money in your pocket. So actual cash value is basically the depreciated amount of the property. So going back to the roof example, if you have a 20-year shingle on a roof that's now 10 years old, there's 50% depreciation. So you have a claim, the hail claim comes, and it's $20,000 to replace the roof. With 50% depreciation, you would get $10,000. That is the actual cash value of the roof.
Right,
And the claims adjusters have all the tables and knowledge.
Oh, yeah.
and Stuff to figure all that out too. I mean, roof is just the easiest, it's just a
Yeah.
sliding scale.
right, right. And that's probably one of the most common claims
Yes,
also.
yes.
Yeah.
So that's the difference between actual cash value and replacement cost. Actual cash value is usually cheaper, replacement cost is more expensive.
More expensive, but a better coverage.
But a better coverage. Excuse me. And what I always tell investors, if you're a small investor, you get one property, you want to go for the best coverage out there. Because you have all your assets tied up in one property.
Right,
If you own 100 properties, you might want to go to actual cash value.
Right.
If one house burns down, you still got the other 99
correct. You
properties.
you spread your risk out.
Exactly, spread of risk, and they're generating income, whereas, so that's, you
Yeah.
know, and it might be worthwhile to save the money or something.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. So, well, what about a situation where
Excuse me.
you get in a co-insurance situation?
Co-insurance means you didn't insure the house for a sufficient amount of coverage. Most policies will have what's called an 80% co-insurance clause, meaning you have to insure the house for at least 80% of its replacement cost. So using simple math, if the house is $100,000 replacement cost, I'm not sure you've replaced any house for $100,000.
Yeah, these days.
But the math is a lot easier to work with. If you have $100,000 replacement cost on a house, you have to insure it for at least $80,000. That's 80%. What happens if you say, well, I don't, the house is never going to burn all the way down. I'm only going to insure it for $50,000. Well, if you insure it for less than the 80%, in the event of a claim, there will be a pro rata difference on the amount of.
That they're gonna pay out.
Pay out.
Yeah.
Exactly. They'll only go pay out 50% of the claim instead of the 100%.
Right, now.
You're not
I
insured.
wonder about that too. Now, what happens as your house appreciates? What happens in that regard, co-insurance?
You need to check with your insurance agent every year saying, hey, am I properly insured? And the inflation protection, it's not market value, it's actually replacement cost. And as we know, lumber prices have been skyrocketing over the last few years and the tradesmen's wages
Right.
have gone up, all that affects the replacement cost of the property. So you need to go every year and say, hey, am I still properly insured?
Right, otherwise you could get caught by that
Yes.
co-insurance clause.
Yes, and every insurance agent has a little software, they can plug the numbers in and tell you what the
Right.
replacement cost is.
Right, I just know investors are leery about increasing their
Right.
costs, but it's false economy.
Yes,
And then what about named peril versus open peril? That's something I don't understand.
okay, name peril, under an insurance policy, for a rental property, basically what we're talking about, there's three types of policies, dwelling fire form 1, dwelling fire form 2, and dwelling fire form 3, 1, 2, 3, with one being the least, the lesser coverage, 2 the middle coverage, and 3 the best coverage. So anyway, name peril means they will provide you a list of what you're insured for. You're gonna be, on the policy, you'll be insured for fire, lightning, smoke damage, damage from a vehicle, damage from an airplane, possibly water damage, and I have to go back to my,
Yeah.
my
Right, your
source
list,
material,
yeah.
to look it up.
Right,
There are actually, the perils are insured.
They're specifically named, yes.
Specifically named. And so you have a claim that's not one of those named perils, if vandalism isn't one of the named perils, and vandalism claim.
okay,
And open peril means you were insured for all direct physical loss to the dwelling, meaning you were insured for everything except what's specifically excluded.
excluded.
And you're
And I'm assuming that's more expensive than
Yes,
named.
yes, but it gives you the best coverage.
Best coverage, right?
And typical exclusions are going to be nuclear explosion, war, terrorism, big one is flood. Flood is not covered under these
Mhm.
policies. And a side note, now we are filming this on October 2nd, the government is currently shut down,
Right,
which affects FEMA, who administers a national flood insurance
that's
program.
correct.
So you cannot get flood insurance today.
Oh,
And if your policy was renewing today, it technically won't renew.
oh,
What happens with the federal government, though, is they will reinstate all those policies will renew. Once they fund the government, they will reinstate the coverage for all those policies. But you won't be able to get new coverage today. So if you're trying to
Right.
close on a house that's in a flood zone, you're probably not
you're
gonna
probably
close.
not gonna close. I hadn't thought about that, but that is so true, absolutely. Well, yeah, and the other thing I want to say is that on like an owner finance, I have so many, because like we said, these aren't your big time lenders and whatnot. Mostly they always tell me, well, just make sure we have a deck page. Well, we need to review the deck page and make sure what coverages you've got. Because just having a piece of paper may not be worth it.
Yes, for the novice investor, again, I would recommend the open peril or all risk or special form, same thing, just different companies naming different thing, and replacement costs. That'll give you the best coverage, best, coverage
Right.
out there.
Right, okay. Well, kind of jumping now from owner finance, because investors do a lot of different type of transactions. Fix and flips are popular with investors. What things should be considered when you're looking to insure those?
A couple things you want to worry about on a fix and flip is you want to ensure the existing structure that you have, which by definition of a fix and flip is probably run down a little bit.
Right.
Or you would be fixing and flipping it.
Correct,
So you're ensuring the existing structure, plus you have to ensure the improvements to the property. So you have to, when you fix and flip, you figure out what your purchase price is, then you have a budget for the renovations. And that's the amount of coverage that you need. So you take the existing structure, $100,000, and we're gonna do a kitchen remodel, a bathroom remodel, paint, carpet, a few other things, and we're up to $100,000 now with that
Right.
stuff. To ensure the existing structure, that 100,000, that's what it's worth, costs $100,000 improvements. It's your total coverage of 200,000.
right, and a lender needs to be paying attention to that too, because they want to make sure that collateral is sufficiently
Right.
insured.
And it's, depending on the type of policy, it's usually broken out into separate coverage, the existing and the improvements.
Okay,
And so,
great, all right, and then the condition of the property, I guess, or the conditions to the
well,
coverage.
yeah, a couple things, we look at, believe it or not, fix and flip, when I was an agent, we wrote a lot of builders risk policies, which were designed specifically for fix and flips. One of the conditions is the house had to be vacant. Believe it or not, they didn't want anybody in the house. someone could fall and trip with all. the
right,
renovations.
okay,
So if there was someone living in the house, if it's occupied, and the claim, there's no coverage. So that's why that was one of the big
Okay.
conditions. Okay. And the other condition that was on it, so the house had to be vacant. And when the house, the renovations are completed, a lot of companies had gave you 60 days of coverage to sell the property. Some of them gave you 90 days. So you had a certain amount of time from the date of completion of the renovations to the coverage expired. It could have been 60 days or the end of the policy period, whichever came first.
okay.
Okay.
So what happens if, like the market we've kind of been in lately, where things are taking,
A
little
little
bit
bit
longer to
longer than
sell?
usual, we would hope. Check, read the policy, fine print, that 60 days is carrier specific. Some of them 90 days, some of them don't have that condition. in there.
Okay.
Okay. If there is a condition that says house is vacant for 90 days, it's vacant and, that time starts when, basically certificate of occupancy. So when all the renovations are done, you did all your punch list stuff.
right,
Uh, if you don't sell it, you have to go to a vacant policy,
vacant policy,
which
okay,
is significantly more
more
expensive.
expensive, okay, all right. Great, well, okay, so what are some of the bigger, you've probably seen it all, kind of like I've seen it all on
Few
legal.
things.
What are some of the biggest gotchas you know of when insuring a property?
Two things come to mind, the ownership, we talked a lot about that in the subject to stuff, but, a lot of times people buy a house. In rental property or fix it, flip, whatever, in their personal name, then a month later, change it
Yes.
over to an LLC.
Yes,
For tax purposes. When you've changed it from your personal name to an LLC, that's an ownership change.
that's correct,
Again, goes back to, we're insuring the owner of the property. When the LLC is not listed on that policy,
we're
so
not
they're
giving them,
not covered.
yeah, that is a big gotcha.
Yeah, so if you do an ownership change, sometimes you have to do a new policy, sometimes you endorse the existing policy.
Right.
It usually doesn't change a premium, doesn't change the price for insurance.
But it's
does-
critical to
But it's
make sure
critical
you
that
have
you
it,
have the correct ownership.
right, right,
The other thing we run into is on rental properties is on vacant property, or excuse me, houses rented out, to landlord, people move out, and most policies give you 30 or 60 days to put a new tenant. If the property goes vacant for more than 60 days, you start, and this will be policy specific. Some of it's 30 days, some of it's 60 days. So you gotta make sure if the house is vacant for, say, more than 60 days, and some policies will say there's no coverage after 60 days.
oh,
So if it burns down, there's no coverage.
oh,
So you gotta be careful reading the vacancy clause of the policy, and it will vary from company to company.
yeah. Well, yeah, those are good things to definitely be paying attention to. So, we don't like to talk about claims, but they do happen. And what would be one of the most interesting claims you've been involved in?
We had a couple of claims, what, there was a local fixer flipper, and you probably, when you mentioned the name, Galen, you would know the person. It was very popular fixing and flipping houses, and all of a sudden, she ran into a problem, that we're gonna get ready to sell it, someone would break into the house and steal
Oh,
stuff,
no. Yeah, the
all the
yeah.
appliances, copper
Water,
pipe stuff,
yeah,
all
yeah.
that type of stuff. What they found out was there was someone on the remodeling crew who was tipping off, either doing themselves or tipping off some of their associates. The house was done, go in and steal stuff.
Wow,
That was it.
wow,
Probably the more interesting, one of the interesting claims. So,
Yeah.
My poor client was horrible, but she had had 3 times to him. So you
wow.
get ready to sell it, you get the closing coming up, and all of a sudden, you gotta redo half the work.
Right, exactly. And then a fire, I guess, a fire happening the day before
Yeah, the
sale, there's a
client,
little bit of an
Had
issue.
it was $250,000 house, or it was a fix and flip again, remodeled it day before they were supposed to close on it, big fire, and they totaled the house.
Wow,
And what they found out, not to blame anyone, but I think the local electric utility had been out there doing something with one of the box and sparked the fire.
oh no, oh no. Well, kind of wrapping things up, tell me about one of the most interesting things you've ever insured.
Okay, this is a little unique. One time unsuccessfully tried to insure the world's largest emerald, which is 892 pounds, I believe. It's the Bahia.
Wow.
Bahia Emerald, Bahia, and you can go Google that, and there's actually a documentary about this emerald. I ran across a client, I don't know, who was a lender to one of my real estate investors, and probably the guy one day said, "Hey, we own this emerald, we're trying to get it insured." Okay, yeah, emerald, $10,000, $20,000. No, it's 892 pounds, and at this time, it was sitting in the vault in the Los Angeles Sheriff's vault, police department, for safekeeping. And the biggest issue, we never weren't successful. Biggest issue was the ownership. This thing had in mind in Brazil, scooted out of the country,
Yeah.
middle of the night somehow, and ended up with it. So the ownership was real questionable. It was a handwritten receipt, in Spanish. So we weren't sure about that, and trying to value it. I didn't value
Yeah,
it.
yeah, how
Yeah.
would you ever value
can't-
that?
We couldn't find anybody good value. They said the guy said it was worth $20 million. It wasn't gemstone quality. It was for the uniqueness of the emerald.
Right.
And, Sotheby's and people like that don't value that kind of
Correct.
emerald. So we couldn't find anybody to
Value it.
put an insurance value on it.
Yeah.
So we never, between that and the ownership, we never were able to insure it. That would have been a nice payday. To me, it's an agent, but.
Sure, absolutely. Well, Mike, you have provided us with a lot of really good information. Like I said, insurance is kind of always one of those issues on an investor, whether it be owner finance, fix and flip, whatever, that is probably one of the least understood by the actual investors and private lenders. So you've really provided us with some good information, and we appreciate everything that you have told us today.
Thank you.
And so I guess that's it for today. Oh, unless you want
I
to
was
say
just
something
gonna
else.
say, find yourself a good insurance agent and work with them. Don't go nickel and dime stuff. Make
Correct.
sure you spend your insurance money wisely, but but
Don't
try to,
cheat yourself.
don't cheat yourself. If there's a problem, you won't be happy.
Absolutely. That's a good way to end, and that wraps up, I guess, our legal answers just for real estate for today.
Thank you.